Okay, so we're looking at editing one of the photographs from the workshop. Um, so this is the raw image, and straight away I can see a few little things wrong with there. So the exposure, it's tiny bit underexposed, just a little bit, and the way I know that, it'll look at the histogram, just like you look at the histogram on the camera. We've got the histogram at the top there. And so we just got a little bit there. It's not too bad at all. We just got a little bit of shadow here. So this on the left hand side is showing us the dark area. And if I was to bring up the shadows on the slider, you can see that that is now changed and we're not peeking into the blacks anymore. So that's getting the exposure more or less right. Now, I'm not trying to get it perfect. You won't get it perfect. What we're trying to do is to get a good overall exposure, and there may be areas that we need to edit further, and that's best done in Photoshop rather than in Lightroom. So the first stage is in Lightroom getting the basic raw editing. Now if you use the raw editing in Photoshop, it's identical. All the sliders do exactly the same thing. The only difference is these tools going across here are usually positioned towards the top left there when you're actually using Adobe Raw. This is Adobe Raw. It's just in Lightroom, that is basically the engine is Adobe Raw, the same as in Photoshop. So sliders and everything do exactly the same thing. They're in the same locations, just these tools at the top that you need to change. And really we're not going to use much of those for this shot, apart from the crop. Okay, so let's look at the photo. We can try and bring the shadow detail out a bit, especially on this left hand side. We're losing a little bit of shadow, so I'm going to bring the shadows up. You can see I've already dragged it up that bit. And I'm going to take the overall exposure up, so that will affect all the photograph. And when I do that, I'm looking at the histogram. So I don't want it to peak on the right hand side and lose the highlight details. Okay, so that's fine. Now we're losing a little bit of detail in this area. So once we've got the exposure up, the next thing to correct this area is just to bring the highlights down a little bit. Now this will affect the whole of the image, so I'm only going to do it a little bit. And you can see that bit of detail coming back into that area. And also because we took the shadows up, we've now got a little bit of detail coming back in this area. So that's the way to work, looking at the histogram, taking the exposure up if you need to, or down if you're overexposed, and getting that more or less in the area to get the overall balance, and then tweaking it using the highlights and the shadows. The whites, the difference between the whites, if I push that up, you can see it going up to where, and it's just bringing up the pure white, so that affects just the pure white. So again, if you brought the highlights down, you can get the detail back, and you can adjust the whites just to get the balance between the pure white and the highlights of the image. So the highlights will get you that detail back in that area, and the whites will just tweak it up and get it closer to the peak without losing the detail. So that's not too bad. Overall now it's looking good. One thing though, if I just zoom in on this, so I'm going to click, and what I do, I'm going to check the actual level of the image, which is slightly out. So if I take this picture up, so this is the level that we're using. It's no good using this. The water is our spirit level as such. So if I bring this image up to the top, I can see that slope much easier. So that's the way I actually tell. I don't trust anything else. I use my eyes, and I just use the top and drag the image up just to check the actual position there. So if we go out there, if I now click the crop tool, and we've got these lines to help us there, and if I hold down the mouse outside of that area, and you've got this like banana shaped mouse pointer, and I hold down that, I can slide that and just level it up by eye. So that's one way, and then when I let go, I just check these lines And if I want to be more precise, I prefer doing it that way, but if you want to be more precise, you can click on this. So let's just put that back to where it was. So I'm going to press Command Z. So that's how it was originally. If we use this angle tool, so if you click there, and basically all you do with this is to get on the line with your mouse, and we click here, and I'll keep the mouse down, and then you can move this over to there. So you're going along the horizon and let go, and that will adjust it. And then you press the enter key on the keyboard, and that's got it nice and level now. So now if we zoom in, we should be, you can see we've got the perfect horizon. So that's how I check it. Always zoom in and then just drag it up and use the top of the screen as the level. So that's corrected. We've got the exposure nice now, it's not too bad. And then we're going to take it into Photoshop just to tweak a few other areas. So I'm going to right click on the image. So it's on the picture, right mouse button, edit in Photoshop. And once we click there, it'll open Photoshop. It may take a while, depending on how fast your computer is, and it'll load up the actual image. There we go. Okay, so if we look at the toolbar on the left hand side, the first thing I always do is to go to the hand tool, which is like the hand there, and we double click that, and that just makes the picture fit to the screen. So it's just nice to actually view it. So two buttons that are handy is the zoom tool, and if we double click the zoom tool, that shows us the image at 100%, and that's nice to view the detail and make sure we've got all the detail there. And the hand tool, double clicking that, will take it so it fits the screen. So those two, double clicking, is a nice way of just moving in and out. And also if I double click the zoom tool and I can't see what I want to see, if I just hold down the space bar on the keyboard, the hand tool appears, and with the space bar held down, I can drag this to any position while that space bar is down. And let go of the space bar, then it goes back to the tool. Hold it down again. So if I click now, we're getting that. So I'll double click the hand tool again. So that's how you can move through your image to check parts of the images by holding down the space bar. And it's any tool that you're using, when you hold down the space bar, you will get the hand tool appear. So it works with all the tools. So when you let go, it will then revert back to the tool that you was using. Okay, so we haven't done anything with it yet. The first thing we want to do is to view the layers of the image. And if I go to Window, these are all the different things on there. Now there is a shortcut on the right hand side, which I'll show you in a moment, but if you click Layers, so it's in alphabetical order, it will then bring up the layers palette so you know where it is basically. And if I press this little arrow there, click that one, it will take it away, but we've still got the icon on the right hand side there that I can click to show it that way. So either way, doesn't matter. Now what I usually do is to duplicate this layer, just so that if I do any editing and I don't like it, I can delete it and I've just got this background layer. So a layer is like a stack of images on top of each other. So to get a new one from that, I'm just going to right click. So the right click is really important. Most things you right click on, you'll get a shortcut for. So I can duplicate the layer, and I'm just going to click OK on that. Wait for that to duplicate. It'll take a little while because again this is a really large image, so it's 30 megapixel file. Okay, so we've got the background copy there now. Now all we're going to do now is analyze this photo. So we're going to look at it, and it's not too bad. It's not too bad. There's a few little things. I may want to get rid of this rock down there, so we'll do that. And also I want to tone this down a little bit, just make this a little bit darker, and I want to make this area along the dam wall just a little bit brighter. Now we use all of the same tools for getting the shadow and the light that we want within the photo, and that tool is simply the lasso tool. So that's the tool that I use the most in Photoshop for lots of different things. And the important part is when you're using this is to get a nice soft edge on your selection. And you haven't got to be great at drawing with this. It's very, very loose, very freehand. You haven't got to worry too much about how good you are or how bad you are drawing at all. So the feather is on the toolbar at the top there. So you'll see the feather, and I've got quite a large feather already sitting there. Usually that will be on 0. And I'll just show you how this works. So if I draw a selection, and what we're going to do with this is we're going to use the adjustment layers. And again, if you can't see the adjustment layers on the right hand side, it's like a circle, half black, half white. Then you can go to Window and get it from there. So it's in alphabetical order, and you'll see the actual settings on there. So adjustments is there, we click there, and that will bring up the adjustments. And the only one that we're going to use is this one called curves, nothing else. That's all we're going to use. So I'm going to click on that. And this is just an example. So, you know, we don't really want to do anything with that area. But when I drag this up from the middle, I'll go to the middle and I'll click and hold down the mouse. It'll take a few moments again because of the quality of the image. And then if I move it up, you can see that now lightening that area. And if I drag it this way, it will darken the area. Now it looks totally terrible at the moment. It looks really unnatural because it's got a hard edge. So that is where we talk about the feather. So let me just delete this. So I'm going to delete that adjustment, and we're going to use this again, and this time I'm going to put quite a large feather on. Now in this case it's a really large image, it's a 30 megapixel image, so I could use a really large feather of around 70 or 80. Probably another full frame like the 5D or the 1DX or something like that. We've got a little bit lower resolution. I'd use a feather of around 60, and it's trial and error. So I'm going to type in 60 in there. And then what we're going to do, rather than just go to that area and just show you how it works, I'm going to actually go to the area that I want to adjust. And I want to adjust this part, this lighter area of the plug hole there. So I'm going to draw from this area, and it's very loose, something like that. And you can see it rounds off because we got this soft edge on. So it will give me a smooth transition when I use those curves again. So I'm going to go to the curves and click on the adjustments there. I'll go to the curves again, and we use this in the same way. We go to the middle, we click, and to make it lighter, you drag up towards that corner, and to make it darker, you drag down to the bottom. Now, the adjustment usually is very, very slight. So I'm just going to drag it down just a little bit, and I'm looking at this area. And I'm just getting a little bit of detail back into that by bringing it down. And that's enough, that's all it needs. Now if I look at the layers, you'll see that this adjustment layer is sitting there, and this white area is the part of the image on the mask there, that's called the mask. The black is transparent, the white is the part that's been affected. So that little white bit is this bit on the image, that's the selection. And if I click the eye, you can see that takes it away, that brings it back. So that's without that adjustment, and that's with it. So it's very, very slight. And in most cases it just needs that little bit of a tweak. And now we're going to do exactly the same thing. So all I've got to do, I'll just get this out of the way. I'm still on the lasso tool, and all I've got to do is draw another selection. So I'm going to draw along this area. Now I've gone over slightly and I don't want to. So again, on what's called the options bar, at the top, some call it the toolbar, the options bar. We've got these buttons here, and if we look along, we've got new selection, we've got add to selection, and we've got subtract from selection. Now I want to subtract because I want to take a little bit away, so I'm going to click on that one, and then if I draw, just take that bit off. It's a bit close to the edge there. It's just a tiny little bit, and if you go to add, you can add other areas. I don't want to go over that, but that's how you add to it. Just undo that. But I could do this part now, so if I want to affect this part as well, I'll just say, well, I want to make that a bit light as well. Now we've got this feather on, so when you do small thin areas, it may not pick it all up. It may sometimes give you a warning. So I'm going over it again. So it's just added that little bit. And we do exactly the same again. We go back to the adjustments. I click back on the curves. And this time we want to make it brighter. So we click in the middle and we bring it upwards towards this corner just a little bit. And now you can see I brought that detail back into the image. Now it may be I want to bring a little bit more back in this area. Now because it's a small area, the feather I may have to reduce, because if it's set at 60 and I'm quite close, it's not going to pick up that area. So I'm going to use a slightly smaller feather on this, and it'll let me. There we go. So I'm going to click in here, and I'm going to type in, let's just try 20, because I'm just going to do a little small area just down here, and then go to the adjustments just like before. We can do as many of these as we want. Go to the middle, drag it up slightly, just a tiny bit. We don't want it to look too bright, we just want to bring it out just that little tiny bit. So it's very slight. And if we look now at the layers, we've got these three adjustments. So that one's on this area of the tower, that affects that. This one is going along the wall. This one is affecting the centre of the plug hole. So we've got all those different ones. And let's say one was too, let's say we'd made this a bit too bright. You can adjust it by simply going to the layer. So that's the layer with the wall on there. So you click on there and you can take the opacity of the layer down. So if you click on the word opacity, if I take that all the way to the left and you look at the damn wall up here, and then I drag it up slightly, you will see that I can get any adjustment from 0 to the full adjustment that we made, and just tweak it a little bit if we need to. Now, I was quite happy with how it was, so, but that's, you know, you can go back to that area and tweak it slightly if you want to take it down. So we're looking okay now. Now what I'm going to do at this point, making sure I'm happy with all the exposure and everything, I'm just going to right click anywhere on one of these layers and go to flatten image, and that will discard all the layers. We can't get those back now, they've gone, and it's applied it to that one image. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this background again. So right click, duplicate the layer. It's always a good idea just to protect it. And when I've duplicated it, I'll just hide this for a moment. I want to get rid of this bit of rock there. So an easy way of doing this is using what's called, so quite often the spot healing brush will be up here. If you click on that spot healing brush, you will see there's other tools available there, and we want the patch tool. So if you click on the patch tool, and the way this works, we look at the top and we need to make sure that this is on source, not destination. So make sure that source is selected. Usually by default it is. And what we do is we click just outside of this and draw around it. So when I come round the bottom of things, I can come well below the bottom just to make sure that I'm right on, instead of trying to get right to the edge. Come well below and it will just automatically go to the bottom then. And all I do when I've done that is put the mouse in the middle. I'm going to drag it up slightly. And that's now got rid of that magically. So I'm going to right click, deselect. Just a little bit here. So I'm going to just do that little edge bit and bring that over here. Right click, deselect. And that's now looking pretty good. Just a tiny bit there maybe. It's okay. So now we have the perfect image. So when we're at that stage again, we can just flatten the layer. Right click, flatten image. Now if I was going to put that in a competition, I'd need to resize it and whatever. I wouldn't resize it at this point because I'd like to save it at that size in case I wanted to print it or whatever. But importantly, in most cases, not thinking about the size, because I'll go into resizing at some other time, but we need to make sure, if we go to edit, and we go convert to profile, and we need to check the profile, and it's Pro Photo RGB in this case. Now that could be anything on your camera, it could be something completely different, but what we want this to be is the destination space where it says profile there. We want that to be sRGB, so that's just above halfway. sRGB 2.1, because that is the best option for most printing, and for screen display it's the best setting. So for a DPI especially, it needs to be sRGB, and for most prints, unless they state otherwise. So you can use profiles that are set to the paper that you're using, or the printers that you're using, they may have their own profile, but in most cases, if you haven't got one, select sRGB and that will give you the best option of a good print. Click on OK. And now our image is complete, and we just need to click File, Save. And when we do that, just saving the file. When we close Photoshop, because we've opened it in Lightroom, it will go back to Lightroom. So Lightroom's still open down here, and there is the edited photo. And I can tell that because it's got the word TIFF there, so it's converted it to a TIFF file. If I click on this one, oh, it's this one, sorry, that was the shot. So that's the original, and this is now the edited photo. Original and the edit. So you can see how much better that image is to the actual original one. And if we look now at this, the histogram, we've got the perfect image. Now if I wanted to export this file, if I right click on it and go to export, and then export again, you can select, so you can go on here where the folder specific, you can change this to specific folder or same folder as original. I usually use a specific folder, and then I click on here, choose, and say where I want to put it on the computer. So that's important. And I usually put them in subfolders, so I've called this Lady Bower Workshop. So I'll tick that and type that in. And then the main thing is to make sure that your JPEG, this will actually change the colour space for you. So you haven't got to change the, if you don't change it in Photoshop, you can change it to sRGB in here, and that's already selected by default in most cases. So that's fine. And then we make sure that the quality is up to 100% because I want the highest quality in case I want to put this in a print competition or anything like that. I want the best quality, and then when we click on export, it will put it in that folder. So that is now in that location that I've saved it to as a JPEG file. So we have got the original. It doesn't delete the original. We've still got that. This one, sorry, there we go. So there's the original. That's the CR3. That's my file for the raw file, the Canon raw file. And that one is a TIFF file. So that's the one we edited. And then the one we've actually exported to a different location is the JPEG file. So we've got 3 copies of that. It never overwrites the original file. That's the beauty of that. We've still got the original, and whatever we've done to that, we can reset it. So there you go. There's maybe that shot I've done originally. If I click on reset on that, you'll see, yeah, it was that one, not the other one. There we go. So we've got 3 of 3 on that one, and that's the edited photo there. But the actual one that we took without using any filters came out quite nice actually. And with this one, you could probably get away with quite a lot of manipulation. So I'm just bringing the shadows up. The black's quite dark, so bring the blacks up slightly. Bring the whites up just a touch. And then I want to get some detail back in there, so I'll bring down the highlights. If the highlights are bringing down the exposure too much, I adjust with the white. So it's just a little fight between the whites and the highlights to get what you want. Take the old exposure up. We can bring the shadows up, and that should bring a little bit more detail in. So that's not a bad exposure. So you can, that's just from the one shot, no filters on that one, and quite a nice image. And we've got a little bit more of the actual plug hole on that shot as well. So some people like the smooth look, some people don't. You've got both there, but I do like the water on the. I like the way it smooths this water out when we use the filters. The ND filter we used on that, we used a 10-stop ND filter, a polarizer, which brings out the blues a little bit as well, adds a bit to the blues, takes a little bit of the highlight off on the water. So that's the reason we used those filters. Okay, so that's all from me. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope it helps. I'm signing off. All the best, Les Arnott.